Grégory Villemin, was just a 4-year-old boy, a sweet, innocent child, full of life. On the 16th of October 1984, in the quiet village of Vosges, France, he was abducted right from the front yard of his home. Later that very night, his tiny body was found, lifeless, just 2.5 miles away, in the cold, unforgiving waters of the Vologne River near Docelles. But what truly shatters the soul is the haunting possibility that little Grégory may have been thrown into that river alive. This heartbreaking case, now known as the Grégory Affair, captivated the nation. For decades, it has dominated headlines, stirred public outrage, and left behind a trail of pain and unanswered questions. And even after all these years, the murder of little Grégory Villemin remains unsolved. Hello viewers, today I will tell you horrific murder story of Grégory Villemin, an innocent child who were brutally killed by someone. So, without wasting another moment, let's begin the video. The murder case of Grégory Villemin. Grégory Villemin's tragic end may have been written long before that dreadful October day. From as early as September 1981, up until the very month of his death in October 1984, his parents, Jean-Marie and Christine Villemin, along with Jean-Marie's own parents, Albert and Monique, were haunted. They received countless anonymous letters and chilling phone calls, all from a man who seemed consumed by vengeance, threatening Jean-Marie over some unknown offense. It was a voice filled with hatred, a shadow lurking behind words, and no one knew who it was or what he truly wanted. On October 16th, 1984, around 5 p.m., Christine Villemin noticed something was wrong. Her little boy, Grégory, who had just been playing happily in their front yard, was gone, vanished. Frantic and terrified, she reported him missing to the police. Just 30 minutes later, at 5:30 p.m., a chilling message pierced through the family's panic. Grégory's uncle, Michel Villemin, rushed in with horrifying news. He had received a call. An anonymous voice, cold and cruel, said the unthinkable, that Grégory had been taken and thrown into the Vologne River by 9 p.m. The nightmare became real. Grégory's small, lifeless body was discovered in the dark waters of the Vologne. His hands and feet were bound tightly with rope, and a woolen hat had been pulled down over his innocent face. It was a sight that no parent, no human being, should ever have to witness. Investigation and suspects, the very next day, October 17th, 1984, as if the pain weren't already unbearable, the Villemin family received yet another anonymous letter. Just 5 chilling words, scrawled in ink, like a final blow. I have taken vengeance. The message was cold, calculated, and deeply personal. Whoever wrote it, whoever made those terrifying phone calls over the past 3 years, knew everything about the Villemin family, their routines, their relationships, their secrets. He had been watching, waiting. The media gave him a name, Le Corbeau, the Crow, a French term used for a faceless tormentor, an anonymous letter writer who spreads fear from the shadows. And now, Le Corbeau had claimed responsibility for the death of little Grégory. The next month, on November 5th, Bernard Laroche, a cousin of Grégory's father, Jean-Marie Villemin, was implicated in the murder by handwriting experts and by a statement from Laroche's sister-in-law, Muriel Bolle, and taken into custody. How Bernard Laroche became the prime suspect in this case? According to various statements, including that of Muriel Bolle, Bernard Laroche harbored deep jealousy toward Jean-Marie Villemin, especially after Jean-Marie received a promotion at work. But it wasn't just about the job. No, it went far deeper than that. Apparently, Bernard had spent his entire life comparing himself to his cousin. They had gone to school together, and even then, Jean-Marie seemed to shine brighter. Better grades, more friends, girlfriends who liked him. Everything Bernard never quite had. And as the years passed, living side by side in the same community, that quiet resentment grew until it festered into something dark, something dangerous. Bernard watched as Jean-Marie built a successful life, while he remained in the shadows, consumed by envy. Jean-Marie was everything Bernard was not: a young, handsome man with a beautiful home, a happy marriage, a well-paying job, and most of all, an adorable little boy. Grégory was strong, healthy, full of life. Bernard too had a son around the same age, but unlike Grégory, his child was fragile, frail. There were even whispers, though never officially confirmed, that Bernard's son may have suffered from a slight mental disability. And while no one can say exactly how Bernard felt, the contrast between their lives, between their sons, must have cut deep. Jealousy doesn't always come with a warning sign. Sometimes, it brews in silence until it explodes. Bernard didn't just keep his jealousy to himself. He would often visit family and friends, not to reconnect, but to talk trash about Jean-Marie. Spreading bitterness, planting seeds of resentment. Little by little, it's believed he may have influenced others to turn against his cousin too. That's why investigators began to suspect that Bernard wasn't acting alone. They believed he played a role in Grégory's murder, and possibly that other family members were involved as well. But then, everything shifted. Muriel Boll later recanted her testimony, claiming that the police had forced her to speak, that it had all been coerced. Bernard Laroche, who had always denied any involvement in the crime, and insisted he was not the Crow, was released from custody on February 4th, 1985. And that's when Jean-Marie Villemin, crushed by grief and rage, stood before the press and made a chilling vow he would kill Bernard Laroche. The later suspects. Then, on March 25th, another shocking twist. Handwriting experts identified Grégory's mother, Christine Villemin, as the likely author of the anonymous letters. Just 4 days later, on March 29th, 1985, the grief, the pressure, the rage, all of it came to a breaking point. Jean-Marie Villemin shot and killed Bernard Laroche as he was leaving for work. It was a cold, tragic end to a man he believed had stolen everything from him. Jean-Marie was convicted of murder and sentenced to 5 years in prison. But with credit for time already served while awaiting trial, and a partial suspension of his sentence, he was released in December 1987 after serving just 2.5 years. In July 1985, another devastating blow. Christine Villemin was charged with the murder of her own son, despite the anguish she had already endured. Pregnant at the time, she refused to accept this fate. In a desperate act of defiance and despair, she launched a hunger strike, one that lasted for 11 long, agonizing days. But even in her suffering, justice began to take its course. An appeals court reviewed the case and found the evidence flimsy, the motive non-existent. Christine was freed, and finally, on February 2nd, 1993, after years of torment and uncertainty, Christine Villemin was cleared of all charges. The case was reopened in 2000 in a final attempt to uncover the truth. DNA testing was conducted on a stamp used to send one of the anonymous letters, but the results were inconclusive. Then, in December 2008, after years of unanswered questions, and at the Villemins' request, a judge ordered the case to be reopened once again. This time, DNA tests were conducted on the rope that had bound Grégory, on the letters, and on other pieces of evidence. But once again, the results were inconclusive, and as if the pain couldn't get any worse. In April 2013, another round of DNA testing was done on Grégory's clothes and shoes. But it too came back without answers. According to another track of investigation, Grégory's great-granduncle Marcel Jacob and his wife Jacqueline were involved in the killing, while his father's cousin Bernard Laroche was responsible for the abduction. Bernard's niece, Muriel Boll, was in the car with him when he abducted the boy and handed him over to a man and a woman, presumably Marcel and Jacqueline. Muriel admitted this in front of the police only weeks after the actual crime, but withdrew her statement a couple of days later. Bernard had lived with his grandparents as a child and had grown up with his uncle Marcel, who was about the same age as him. The whole Jacob family had a long-standing hatred for the Villemin clan, a hatred that had festered for years, ever since their sister aunt had married into the family. The weight of this animosity seemed to have shaped Bernard's life and perhaps led him down a dark path of resentment and revenge. On 14th June 2017, based on new evidence, 3 people were arrested: Grégory's great-aunt, Marcel Jacob, and great-uncle, Jacqueline Jacob, as well as an aunt, the widow of Grégory's uncle, Michel Villemin, who died in 2010. The aunt was released, while the great-aunt and great-uncle invoked their right to remain silent. Muriel Boll was also arrested, and she was held for 36 days before being released, as were the others who had been detained. On 11 July 2017, the young and inexperienced magistrate Jean-Michel Lambert, who was initially taking care of the case, committed suicide. In a farewell letter to a local newspaper, Lambert cited the increasing pressure he felt as a result of the case being reopened as the reason for ending his life. In 2018, Muriel Boll authored a book on her involvement in the case, Breaking the Silence. In the book, Boll maintained her innocence and that of Bernard Laroche and blamed police for coercing her into implicating him. In June 2017, Boll's cousin Patrick Fevre told police that Boll's family had physically abused Boll in 1984 and pressurized her to recant her initial testimony against Bernard Laroche. In her book, Boll accused Fevre of lying about the reason why she recanted her initial statement. In June 2019, she was indicted for aggravated defamation after Fevre lodged a complaint with police. Muriel Boll, Marcel and Jacqueline Jacob spent months in custody, but were released because of insufficient evidence and after a mistake in the court procedure. The local report stated that Grégory's father, Jean-Marie Villemin, was an arrogant person and liked to brag about his wealth, and that had caused a falling out with his cousin Bernard Laroche. It's quite obvious that the killer must have been some jealous member of the family, and the new investigations have put forth the new suspects every time from his family. But still, the whole story remains a riddle. What a nightmare this family has been through. The loss of their child in a terrible murder, the mother arrested, jailed and under a cloud of suspicion for years, the father himself driven to murder. And exactly why all this happened is still a mystery. The actual culprit remains unidentified to this day. Viewers, this was the heartbreaking story of Grégory Villemin. His case is still unsolved. What do you think about this chilling story? Share your thoughts in the comment box below and let us know how you feel about this gruesome act. Thanks for watching. If you found this story gripping, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. And remember, if you or anyone you know is battling dark thoughts, don't hesitate to reach out to a mental health professional. The weight of these stories, they can take a toll. So please, take care of yourself. Until next time, and I'll meet you in a new interesting video.